Good morning. Very good. My name is Michael Lake. I am the president and CEO of a nonprofit organization called Leading Cities. The purpose of Leading Cities is to bring cities from around the world together, engaging their business, civic, academic, and citizen leaders to identify and exchange best practices in public policy. We are here today, this morning, to talk about governance challenges for smart cities. And our objective is really to identify those challenges, explore solutions, and to ultimately exchange and share frameworks for actionable steps so that every city can make strides towards becoming a smart city in the 21st century. You know, much has been said about the challenges facing our world in this century. The fact of the matter is, those challenges will be addressed and solved by cities. So the work we do together, the work we do as city leaders, is going to change the face of our planet, whether it's infrastructure and education or job creation and climate change. Those are the issues that cities will have the opportunity to address in the 21st century. You know, governance is defined as setting expectations, managing performance, and sharing the authority to execute implementation. Today we talk about the challenges of governance to achieve smart cities. We are very fortunate to have an incredible panel of speakers, experts and leaders in their cities. First, we are joined by Antoni Vives, the Deputy Mayor of the city of Barcelona and our host today. Mr. Vives has had a long career in both the private and public sector and significant leadership positions. He's also an author, having written several books and still publishing in news outlets across the country. Mr. Vives, we're grateful for hosting us. We thank you for being here this morning. Next, we have Pedro Paulo Carvalho, the Chief of Staff to the Mayor of Rio de Janeiro. The city of Rio, as we all know, is going through a very exciting time with many opportunities to shape its image and appearance, so to speak, in the 21st century. That image is being shaped by Mr. Carvalho and his team, and we're grateful to have you among us. We also have Mr. Charbel Aoun. Mr. Aoun is the Senior Vice President at Schneider Electric. His team has been focusing on implementing smart city strategies, business development for Schneider Electric. And he is a true leader, having experience for years in the industry. We're grateful to have you here as well. And finally, we have Laura Ipsen from Microsoft, a Corporate Vice President for worldwide organizations. She leads a team of over 1,900 individuals focusing on government organizations and delivering solutions in more than 100 countries. So we start this morning by looking at the challenges facing cities and their ability to achieve smart city status. So I ask of the panel, each of you to take just a few minutes and share with us your reasons and thoughts as to why cities have not already achieved that smart city status. Mr. Vives, do you want to start?
Well, first of all, good morning, everybody. It is a pleasure to be here with you. Well, in such an impressive audience. It is unbelievable how people spend their time here in Barcelona. There's a life out there. Well, I think that smart cities hasn't reached, the concept hasn't reached the aim yet, because in here we have very smart companies, but we haven't got smart politicians enough. And I am a politician, I'm a professional politician. What I mean is that you guys, what you need is a real client, and you haven't got it. You've got people to talk to, you've got people to sell to, but you haven't got a real client. So the real smart city is going to come when we all build together together with the academy, by the way, and together with the citizenship, by the way, what really is needed to improve daily life of Señora Maria and Señor José, of Mr. Peter and Miss Mary. Otherwise, you and us are lost. You're going to sell us a hell of a lot of devices. You're going to sell us a hell of a lot of chips and bytes, but it's going to last for a couple of years. You're going to sell us a lot of whatever, software or whatever. But you know what? We won't be elected anymore, and you won't sell anything else to our city because people are fed up with solutions related to administration. And we have to put in place solutions that are meaningful for real people. How do we improve real life? Once we have done that, then we can work on processes, we can work on organization engineering, whatever. But what we really need is improving daily life of our citizens. If we do that, we're going to get the smart cities. If we don't do that, we are going to have the dumb cities that we have, the dumb politicians that we have, if you allow me, these dumb companies that do not understand that we have a treasure in front of us, which is called the new economy of the city, and someone is going to take it over, but it's not going to be you.
Thank you. Laura, I know you and Microsoft have been working with city leaders for a long time. From the private sector's perspective, what do you see as the real roadblocks for achieving the smart city of tomorrow?
I think just to tie into Mr. Vives, that cities have been smart for quite some time, but you look at the physical infrastructure and the physical architecture of cities, just phenomenal, whether it's in Barcelona or the thousands of years ago with the Romans. I think the new opportunity that we have today is around the digital architects of the future, and what stands in the way is, I think, a new way that we can collaborate with public-private partnerships, with sponsorship of cities, not for what technology can bring, but how technology brings solutions to meet the goals of cities. And I think the smartest cities and where we can take down some barriers is around forming best practices and replicable models, whether it's here in Barcelona, as you've opened up massive amounts of data and engaging citizens differently. And I think the opportunities, the barriers have been, how do cities get smarter to meet the needs of all citizens, and the opportunities around technology, and how do you expose that information, get collaboration, get the feedback from citizens to be smarter? Because at the end of the day, the focus has to be around sustainable cities, about economic growth and jobs, and new forms of citizen engagement. So taking down barriers is really about having a new way of communications. Technology can enable that. It's not the solution. People are the answer to those issues. And looking at how citizens can engage on everything from policy issues to the core decisions, so governments can provide more opportunities with less, because many governments have been cutting budgets, and do new things for engagement. So I think the barriers are really more about the opportunities, and that technology is simply one of the enablers. And that's how we view the opportunity for smart cities through what we're driving called City Next.
And Mr. Carvalho, with the opportunities you have in Rio right now, we've heard from both Laura and from Antoni that really citizen engagement is a key factor here. What, if any, struggles have you seen in Rio in terms of engaging citizens?
So I prefer speaking in Spanish.
Please.
Sí, en Río ahora tenemos un desafío muy grande, ¿no? Que es toda la preparación de la ciudad para las Olimpiadas de 2016. Y esto para nosotros es clave porque aún más que hacer buenos juegos, hay que producir un cambio para la ciudad, sea después de 2016 como una forma de legado, pero también la imagen de Río y la imagen de Brasil hasta los juegos. Producir juegos con planificación adecuada, a costos adecuados y necesariamente con la participación del ciudadano, que el ciudadano se sienta también parte de esta transformación. Y yo creo que el concepto de Smart Cities es también muchísimo importante para que podamos trazer el ciudadano para participar de esta transformación. Porque un elemento clave para nosotros es una forma es cómo los gobiernos tienen la coraje de poner los datos abiertos para que los expertos possam desenvolver programas, puedan desenvolver soluciones para la ciudad. La otra cuestión es cómo el ciudadano participa de este proceso, porque creemos nosotros que hay una profunda crisis en la democracia representativa. Las personas no quieren los tiempos que tiene la democracia representativa de 4 y 4 años. Las personas quieren participar aún más. Y las posibilidades digitales de construir proyectos que sean colaborativos para nosotros es una forma importante de crear una ciudad que sea una ciudad de smart cities. Entonces, esto es un elemento clave. Por ejemplo, nosotros en junio vivimos protestas en todos los cantos de Brasil. Casi 1 millón de personas fueron a las calles. Y estas protestas, todos ellos manifestados por las redes sociales, todos ellos fueron movimentados por las redes sociales, y fueron protestas en que las personas decían, queremos participar del proceso. Y hay un problema de gobernanza que yo creo que nosotros tendremos que desarrollar no solamente productos, soluciones que sean del gobierno para el ciudadano o de las empresas para los ciudadanos, pero que el ciudadano participe también de la construcción de estas soluciones, que el ciudadano participe también de la decisión de las políticas que son aplicadas para ellos y cómo estas soluciones pueden salir a partir del ciudadano también. Esto es un reto importante para el futuro de una Smart City, en mi opinión.
Thank you. So, Mr. Aoun, we have already talked about the importance of both top-down and bottom-up approach to creating smart cities. Do you want to give us some of your thoughts in terms of what are those hurdles that need to be overcome to achieve that?
Absolutely. If I can pick up on what my colleagues here said, I think it's a journey that is happening for quite a few years now. If we see the evolution that is happening is we move from a private sector driven agenda, then cities came into the mix and adjusted and fine-tuned what it means. And now we're seeing the language is about citizens need to come into the mix, and which to me is the second reset of smart city. Is it happening? Yes. Is it happening at the speed we hope? No. Is it happening everywhere? No. And we did honestly work in Schneider on looking at why, and we came with 6 reasons. The number one we looked at is we have barriers on the city organization side. And when we look at it, I think Antoni pointed out to that is it's very rare to find a politician who's willing to embark on this journey and knowing that they will not be around to cut the ribbon. That is not an easy choice. So that leadership is required. But also we have a capability and capacities issues. Barcelona is one of the cities that are able to take that topic, debate it internally and cope with it and put people around it. Not every city can. And that's a challenge. The third one is we have a language barrier. From the private sector and the city, we don't understand cities. We're learning. We made a quite milestone, but we have a lot to learn, and vice versa. So usually technology conversation in many cities is a black hole. So that's the first barrier. The second barrier is metrics or value measurement. Who defines that you are smart and who defines you're not smart? On what basis? We need standards around what it means to measure the value we're creating. And we have a lot in the market, but we need to bring them together. A reference architecture. Every city, and I think the gentleman here from City will tell you that every company that came to talk about smart city has an impressive story and a beautiful PowerPoint and demos. Which one do I choose? I don't want to go in a black box. If I work with you, does it mean I'm stuck? So what's the reference architecture that will bring us together as an industry to give that level of confidence to cities so they open up more? And that's where collaboration is coming in, and we'll talk about that. And the fourth one is the regulation. There are certain things as an industry we can help, but there are certain things we cannot help. There's a lot of cities, they tell us, I want to do A, B, C, and D, and then the private sector is willing to, but guess what? Regulation will not allow us to do it. So there is a serious challenge. We need smart regulation, smart procurement. Now you say about reduction of energy efficiency. There is a dollar value saving behind it. You can get financial, and that's my fifth point, which is the funding model. You can get banks or financial institutions to fund something that is bankable straight away. Would you find banks willing to finance a better life? So what is the new financing model that we need that would allow the combination of social, economic, and environmental value? And the last point to me is the business model. It's about system of systems, solution of solution, complexity of every department coming together to deliver the city. I'm not trying to say it's a mission impossible, but it's a new beast we're dealing with. So there's a lot of players. We're used to the traditional business process where we know where we contain and how we're going to monetize. I'm being very open. Now, when you bring in 5, 6, 7, 10, 15, 20 players in any project in a smart city, this is the reality. You're going to work with the local fabric of the city. How do you plug in everyone? What's the business model that would allow everybody to feel protected? So from our perspective, these are the barriers. What are we doing to do that? There are certain things we can as an industry. There are certain things we cannot. The work we're doing in collaboration, like with Microsoft on the private sector, also with Barcelona, but also we're part of the European Commission, who's also looking at those specific barriers in the new strategic implementation plan that was published. To me, this is where we start seeing progress.
Mm-hmm. Antoni, did you have a comment?
Oh, yeah, of course. I think that Charbel just touched several issues, which are, by the way, related to what Pedro Paulo said before. First of all, standards. Yes, we need standards, worldwide standards, through which cities can be assessed, through which cities can understand which are the critical paths that they have to follow, that we have to follow, to reach the state of the art of what we all understand a real smart city has to be. That's why we launched the City Protocol Society all over the world, with people like you, with people like Microsoft, with other cities like Rio de Janeiro. We're launching the City Protocol because we need to set up standards to become clients. You need us. But we have to feel confident that what you are doing for us, on behalf of us, is meaningful for us. And it is related to real standards, related on what we all understand that are good solutions for cities. Solutions that will have to be adapted. Rio de Janeiro is not like Barcelona, so a standard solution does not mean that you have to reproduce it. You have to adapt that standard solution to each one of the cities. Second point. I hate pilots. If any one of you comes to me selling a pilot, just get away. I don't want to see you. I'm fed up with the streets full of devices. I don't want that. It's a waste of time, a waste of money, and it doesn't deliver anything. It is just for the sake of selling something to the press, and it does not work. It comes back to your mouth in the worst way. So what we have to do is implanting real solutions. Here in Barcelona, we are trying to do that. We have set up what we call internally, this is an internal code, the Smart City, the Barcelona Smart City Kit. It is real, it is scalable. We are phasing it out towards other parts of the city. It can be scaled somewhere else, in any other city. We want to do that. The third thing is related to us, to the cities, ourselves. First of all, we need vision, real visions. We say in Barcelona, for example, that we want to become a city made of productive quarters, self-sufficient from the energetical point of view, hyper-connected to the world, and zero-emission city. Okay, that's our mantra. Many slow cities inside the smart city. Each city has to have a vision, and you should be asking for that vision. But the second thing is that we need an internal reshuffle of our organization. That's why we have created our urban habitat unit, in which we have infrastructures, housing, urbanism, technological systems, information systems, water management, environment management, energy management, and mobility, all together without silos. I manage it all, there's a single budget for that, and we kind of set up specific projects for that. That's a way of getting rid of the silos. And then the last thing, we need to understand, you need to understand that there's a payback for that investment. Barcelona is a beautiful city, we know that, but Barcelona is an obsolescent factory of living. Obsolescent, old. There are lots of things to be done there, and there's money to invest in that, and there's going to be money back. If you expect EBITDA by 6 in 3 years, don't come to us. But if you expect to generate an industrial model, which means you invest for 30, 40 years, there's going to be a sound payback for you. Your stakeholders are going to be happy. We're going to be happy because we are going to get a better city, and we will have an industry here in Rio de Janeiro, in Quito, all over the place.
So one of the things you've just mentioned is the pilots and the challenges of pilots. I know cities around the world face different procurement regulations, as Charbel has already mentioned. I'm just wondering if anybody has had, I'm sure you have experience with dealing with the need for a pilot, but yet the fact that the pilot itself doesn't guarantee business. So from the private sector, this pilot programs are also a challenge. Do you see, Charbel or Laura, do you see ways around the pilot programs to bring value to the city and to bring value to the private sector?
Sure, and I think the worst thing that can happen is that everyone invests in a pilot and it goes nowhere. So we absolutely agree. I think what you need to do is to harness the investments that cities have already made in technology and look to how you scale those, working with other partners and solutions that are already working. And when I talk about solutions, it's typically many different technologies or business process that come together to be differentiated, whether that's around energy or water or transportation. So when we engage with cities, it typically starts with a workshop to understand the goal of the city's needs, what things are working, how do you scale and provide a solution. And the goal is always to say, how do we create sustainability around the solutions that can scale? And I think historically, cities have worked, or the private sector has worked with cities on pilots that maybe have made a good headline. The goal is really to create next generation models that scale and that can be replicated. I think one of the most powerful things that Barcelona that you're doing today is saying, how do we think about the future of information as we harness those big trends around mobility, social, big data, and scale that? And by looking at citizen engagement and creating a model around transparency and openness with new information and social feeds, you've been able to not create a pilot, but actually provide a platform of opportunity and extend those to other cities. And so, yes, sometimes you start with a small concept, but the goal is always to provide to deal with the complexity, to look at opportunities for replicating and scale. And I think with the relationship with Bilbao and Santander, then you don't have a pilot anymore. It's not about one city, but it's the strength of the collaboration with all cities. And I think that's the most powerful thing that we can do from the private sector, is really to look at that and the goals and how you extend them. How do you bring innovation into the universities to be part of this? How do you create programs that leverage the entrepreneurship? One of the great successes that we had with the Microsoft program called BizSmart is a company called BizSmart, which is the dashboard and the openness that you've developed. And that was a startup company, and you could say, maybe that's a pilot, but it was something that you quickly said, how do we scale that and open it up to others so that they can see the model? And it's no longer about pilots anymore. So I think the temptation oftentimes with governments is to rush in and get something done because you want to show progress and economic development and how you're attracting jobs. And I think you have to resist the temptation and really say, how do I make that sustainable for my city so that I can continue to build those building blocks that create these new solutions that I can share with others around the world. Barcelona and Rio are places where so many people come to look at best practices around cities because it is at scale, and the enormous opportunities to say, how do you deal with the complexities of transportation or security as you have major World Cup major events in the country. And I think many people came and said, let's do a pilot and we'll show you how. To be able to resist that and say, how do we build an ecosystem that's sustainable for the solution to scale and replicate and share that with the next city that hosts an Olympics or World Cup is the most powerful thing that we can do to get rid of the pilots and move to sustainable solutions.
Charbel?
I'd like to add another perspective, and I totally agree with how you approach it, Laura. And I think the challenge is, why are we doing the pilot, usually? If we do a pilot, it's because we have innovative technology, new, so we want to prove, de-risk it, we want to demonstrate, showcase. If we have a pilot that lasts beyond achieving the objective of demonstrating A, B, C, and D, then it's a waste of time. It's a very expensive hobby, right? It is, for cities and for us. I think the problem we have is we moved into pilot, assuming that the pilot will move into scale, and we got stuck by regulation, procurement issues. If I come and run a pilot in a city, it doesn't mean I can move it forward because for open procurement, whatever reason. So I think this is one perspective of the problem in the pilot. If you're piloting something new, yes, but if it's already tested, what are you trying to prove? Technology is there or near there. Are you trying to look at the processes? Perspective. Now, the question is, how do we get out of the pressure that cities have, as you alluded to show progress, to demonstrate actions, and how businesses are eager to showcase solutions into actionable, real project. And I think this is a challenge we all have. We like to pilot where customers are looking for evidence. You put a 6 months, and that's it. But if it goes beyond, what's the point? And I agree with Antoni. No more pilot, please. We're done.
So, please.
Sí, me gustaría añadir algunas cosas. Yo creo que el problema del problema de la aplicación de un piloto o de una inversión en tecnología, también el plazo de maturación de esta inversión. Muchísimas veces una ciudad, por ejemplo, como Barcelona, no tan Barcelona, pero como Río o como Ciudad de México, tiene desafíos que son tan grandes en viviendas, en transportes, y que hay una competición de financiación de estas inversiones que muchísimas veces son a largo plazo. Cuando las personas, los ciudadanos quieren los investimentos ahora, quieren resultados ahora. Entonces, este es un primer problema. ¿Cómo competir estas inversiones y proyectos pilotos que tienen una maturación distinta de la realidad de las personas, del inmediatismo de las personas, de las soluciones ahora para el desarrollo de estas ciudades? La segunda cuestión es la contratación. Muchísimas veces los pilotos significan una contratación distinguida de las demás. Un ineditismo de esta contratación, lo que torna para el gestor público una dificultad de contratación. ¿Cómo hacer este proyecto distinguido de los demás? Y esto es un problema que nosotros en Brasil, como en España y como la mayoría de las ciudades, tiene reglamentos de contratación muy rígidos y que pone en riesgo al gestor, al político, para hacer contrataciones de proyectos que sean pilotos, que sean inéditos. Yo creo que esta es una barrera, hay una dificultad, hay la necesidad de probar que estas soluciones son soluciones y que van a impactar realmente la ciudad, sea de su forma de gerenciar, de producir resultados y principalmente la percepción de las personas que estas inversiones, que estos proyectos son proyectos que cambiarán su rutina, su calidad de vida.
Please.
Yes, I think that what Pedro Paulo said is one of the key points. When I was talking about, when I was criticizing so much a pilot, it's because we take it out from the smart city agenda and we put, for example, in the architectural agenda of a city, there's nothing more dangerous than an eager architect dressed in black and a stupid mayor, because then you get those strange things put in the middle of the city. We could have the same thing with smart cities. Stupid mayor and an eager company putting strange stupidities in the heart of a city. I mean, those pilots generate the eagerness for quick solutions. When I think that what we're talking about is about the structural transformation of what the city is. Structural transformation means that in 15 years' time, our citizenship, thanks to an investment, is going to live better. Otherwise, why the hell should we spend public money in that? We have made a calculation in Barcelona. We consider that when you put in place a structural project, you need 15 years to finish it. Let's talk about something specific. We have been constructing, we have been building big silos underneath the city to prevent floods. Barcelona is a city in which you've seen it. When it rains, it rains. And as the rain doesn't know how to rain in this city, even though we have the same amount of rain than London, it rains all of a sudden, and it rains for 4 days. We had lots of floods in this city, with lots of problems. Now, 15 years ago, some people very smart decided that we had to put in place a program of having those big silos. We are finishing it right now. We have invested around $800 million in that. But we took the decision. If we go for the Smart City program, we are doing the same thing. We want to put $800 million, $1,000 million to do that in 15 years' time. It has to be a sound planification with a vision that, by the way, has to be shared no matter the political party who is ruling the city. And that's why we also need an international legitimation for that. That's why we need a city protocol society, whatever society, saying, yes, guys, no matter if you are A party, B party, no matter if you are from Barcelona, from Timbuktu, this is a way you have to follow. Then pilots might make sense, because it's going to be something that you're going to scale up to reality. But if a pilot is just a commercial device to sell you out something, no, please. That was the sense of my words.
If we could raise the lights in the room for just a minute, I'd like to engage all of you in a question. It's already been mentioned several times that for us to pursue our smart city strategies, we really need the vision. But there is this challenge between long-term time to achieve these strategies and the short-term needs of citizens to see real impact today, tomorrow. I'm curious, in terms of citizen engagement, which, by the way, I think is one way, if you engage citizens, it is an opportunity to keep them involved so that they don't need the end result tomorrow, but they're part of the solution. So I'm curious to see, by a show of hands, how many of you have been already directly invited by your city leaders or have taken the initiative yourself to engage with city leaders to pursue a smart city strategy of any kind? Just a show of hands.
As individual or as companies?
As individuals, sorry. Good question, good point. Okay, so very few. This to me is a big challenge that we have. It's the separation between citizens and the leadership of a city. Leaders are being expected to produce results and need time to get it done.
Yes and no. I mean, our citizenship is adult, and they're not stupid. I mean, it is clear that they don't expect from us that we go there and please join me in this adventure. I mean, people, they get up every day at 6:30, they go to work, they have their own plans, their own life. It is our job to make them believe. And I think that we don't have to behave as if we were the dog being walked by the tail of the opinion, or I don't know how to say that in English, or opinioncracia. Opinioncracy is a disaster, and we politicians have been led by those opinion or pollcracy. That's a stupid way of doing things. If you have a strong vision, just put it in place. I mean, you go to Rio de Janeiro, and of course you see that's a very difficult city to run, but these guys, they have a vision, and you smell that from minute one when you're there. No matter if you are in a favela, which has lots of problems, or no matter if you are in the center of Rio de Janeiro, a city in which you fall in love, or you fall in love with the city, and you can fall in love very easily there. You see that there's something that's going on, and that's, I think, the real challenge that we politicians have, not related to citizens, because citizens are clever. I mean, the average is very, very high in our cities. I am not worried by that. I'm not really worried. You read Seneca and you read what happened in Rome 2,000 years ago. It's more or less what's happening nowadays in our cities.
But that involvement that we talked about, engaging citizens from the beginning, having the bottom-up and top-down approach, I think every panelist right now this morning has already talked about that, the importance of that. By the show or lack of hands that were raised, it seems to me that cities are not building the bottom-up approach enough.
Can I add a perspective? I think as a citizen, I don't have visibility to what you're doing as a city official. I measure based on my experience on a regular day. When I commute, I look at, is it within the tolerance I'm used to? And only when things bad happen, I complain. But that's the normal behavior. So what I'm trying to say is the efforts done on the side of the city behind the scene is invisible. It's the communication that I filter. So when it comes to engaging citizens, what I have listened to cities telling me is about where we prioritize projects. The vision, you're absolutely right. You are elected on a mandate and trust from trust license to work on our behalf. When you define a vision of a smart city and you say it means doing A, B, C, D, E, F, G, a long list of things, I think here where you need to have a finger on the pulse, which one is on the triangle of needs is more relevant to my citizen, because most of what you decide is about efficiency, which translates into better service, better experience to citizen. Does it necessarily mean what citizen wants? And that's the question. I don't have an easy answer. I think when we engage with cities, we look at how do we prioritize projects. Cities usually either they can tell themselves or they usually run a little bit of civic engagement around where do you want to focus. We want us to focus our energy.
I would say that politics is also pedagogy. That's right. You're right in your point. Politics is pedagogy. So I think that we have to find a balance between those killer applications that have to make my mother understand what the hell you're doing. My mother always keeps me asking, what the hell are you doing at the City Hall? I listen to you talk. I saw you on the TV. I didn't understand anything, son. What the hell? And I'm trying to explain her. So now, yeah, but that helps us a lot because we try to figure out what kind of killer applications. I'm going to tell you a story. We have implanted some bus stops, intelligent bus stops, smart bus stops in Barcelona. And we unveiled the first one without announcing it. And when the operators were doing that, we had 4 people, 3 young guys and an old woman who could have been my mother. And the 3 guys just went to that screen, which is like a big iPad, and they started playing with the screen. It was connected. It was natural for them. I mean, they are not digital immigrants. They are digital natives. The old woman, let's put my mother, and this is a real story. Well, it's not real. It wasn't my mother, but it was someone else. The old woman went to the screen, and you know that those screens have slots to charge your mobile phone. So you know what she did? She took her purse out, opened the purse, took out a coin, and tried to insert a coin in that slot. So that's the real distance that we have to make people understand what the hell a smart city is about. Someone might think that we are far away from it, but I assure you that it took a minute to that woman to understand what it was all about. So it is more an effort, pedagogical effort, rather than something extra. So I'm quite positive.
Yes. Pedro, Paulo.
Sí, yo creo también que es necesario para involucrar al ciudadano y tener una administración que sea voltada para ser una administración smart, hay que haber entrenamiento, preparación de sus principales líderes del futuro. Por ejemplo, en Río ahora estamos entrenando 200 líderes para ser los líderes del futuro. Y estos líderes que están siendo ahora treinados traen consigo el concepto de una ciudad smart. Este es un punto, treinar la capacitación interna de sus equipos. La segunda cosa es, vivimos un momento donde hay la barrera de las ciudades poner sus datos abiertos, disponibilizar sus datos. de un lado, los datos que sean disponibles para desenvolvedores, para empresas, para crear sistemas, para generar innovación, pero hay una otra parte que es cómo trabajar estos datos para generar informaciones para los ciudadanos, para que el ciudadano conozca lo que está haciendo la administración, conozca su ciudad, todo este universo de información que sea customizado para que el ciudadano consiga mirar aquilo que quiere decir o lo que la ciudad es. Este es un punto. Y cómo involucrar también, hay, por ejemplo, un ejemplo que utilizamos en Río, que es el centro de operaciones, el gran centro de operaciones. Y una forma que hicimos de involucrar los ciudadanos por el camino de la prensa es que la prensa tiene un asiento permanente dentro del centro de operaciones. Las principales cadenas de televisión empieza el día con la transmisión del centro de operaciones y lo que ve es un panel que tiene distintas informaciones de la ciudad, que pasan la percepción que la ciudad tiene una gestión smart, tiene una gestión inteligente. Son mecanismos que nosotros entendemos de involucrar las personas, no solamente ser una administración smart, mas que las personas acepten creaciones, proyectos que sean proyectos smart, para facilitar, por ejemplo, la contratación de proyectos de medio a largo plazo en la área de tecnología.
So, really, one of the things that has come up over and over again since we've started is the theme of collaboration. And this exists between citizens and their city leaders, but also between the private sector and the public sector. Laura, do you mind giving us some of your thoughts on collaboration and how cities can better collaborate with the private sector, what challenges there may exist between them, and what opportunities exist if we can get that right?
Sure, and I think we touched on a few things. I mean, the City Protocol Society around standards. I see some of our friends from Fundación Nacional. I think it's creating an ecosystem, and when we look at how do we support the goals that cities have in the future, number one, I think where the private sector can do a better job is collaborating with each other. So from when I look at cities, I'm excited because I have 430,000 partners that I can work with, and that first and foremost, I need to be collaborating with others that are business process technology. The collaboration with cities can happen in those smart cities organizations that we see more of them coming together to share best practices, to have that common framework and to look at the standards and not to waste funds and resources. So I think moving forward, we have to say, how does collaboration happen in many different ways with citizens, which are so important because as cities collaborate with citizens and understand engagement through social media, et cetera, then you can provide better services and understand where the pulse is, and collaboration happens with citizens differently. I think the other part of collaboration that we see very, very important is how are we collaborating with our universities and academia? And we invest so much in academia, governments do, and I think with the private sector, with nonprofits, with these societies, with universities, to have these forums that there's stronger collaboration and understanding where the resources go so that we're not piloting something in a city at a university, but that we're doing things that prove models that scale. So breaking down the barriers of collaboration, I think we as the private sector can do a better job to collaborate across on solutions. When we look at a city, it's not what is the Microsoft solution, is how do we come together as citizens, most often in these cities, as businesses in the cities to make solutions work around energy to meet the goals of the city, around water and transportation, around the judicial system in new ways, and share those best practices and break down the barriers of things that don't seem to be open or proprietary and create this common understanding and infrastructure. I think that's where we can contribute, investing in universities and research around the future of big data is very important as we move forward. I think that's a place where getting a strong understanding is important for the safety of a city, because some data must be very protected, other data can be opened up. I think that's one area of collaboration that we're now exploring to make sure that we get that right. There's so many issues that are confronted around data privacy and data security, and I think it's probably right now in terms of smart cities, one of the most important areas that we have strong collaboration, understanding, common standards and frameworks around.
Well, we have just a few minutes before I want to open the discussion up to the audience. So I thought if each of you wouldn't mind sharing in 2 minutes or less kind of the next steps in terms of achieving smart city status and overcoming some of the challenges that we've already identified. Charbel, do you want to start?
Sure. I think the first thing that I get asked from cities is, how do we get on with the journey? And the first item to us is just get started. Define where you're going. If you don't know where you're going, you will not get there, or you will arrive there by accident. So if you have a clear objective where you're heading and you create around it a community of investors, and by investors, I don't mean financial investors, I mean people, academia, businesses. Cities are made of the fabrics of the community, enabled through business, academia, and knowledge. So if you're gonna enable that complex puzzle, you need all the pieces. So the many pieces you bring together, the faster you do, the better you're off to make it happen. The second one is you need a foundation. No city runs without infrastructure, and smart cities will not run without smart infrastructure. We talk about silos. Fine, don't break them. I mean, we're not in a position as companies to talk about silos. We're siloed ourselves as companies, large companies. The question is, how do you work across the silos? What's the value we can help cities see so the foundation, the economy of scale, the leverage of common infrastructure becomes a way to facilitate, to give you extra money to do better, more services. You create hybrid services. So that thinking is a little bit a shift of paradigm. The third one we talk about is integration. But we don't believe in the holistic integration and a forced integration. It's a use case based. You have a problem in the street which requires combining light with electric vehicle with a physical safety security to deliver a safer public spaces. That's a smart street. Call it whatever you want. That's a value where you pick and cherry pick options, components from different department solution, you bring them together through and integrate. So integrate based on a need, on a use case to deliver a value. And the fourth point I talk about is innovation, and the last one is collaboration. If you have a foundation, and to us it's a virtuous circle, you start by enabling a foundation. Without that foundation, you cannot innovate. And then you open up the data, as Laura alluded to, and then you start inviting that community of investors you created, and you help them develop, you use the business to, and trust me, they will do a better job than anybody else. The community will innovate. Collaboration to me is, if we agree that no single company can deliver smart city on its own, which we believe, that's a starting point. The second point is, cities are system of systems where we're moving in. It's not only about technology. It's not only about data. It's not only about integration. It's about architect. It's about telecom providers. It's about garbage collector. It's about every aspect of the city. If you want to bring intelligence and efficiency into this to deliver a livable, efficient, sustainable city, you need to move all those pieces. And that brings the collaboration perspective. And it's not the old terminology of let's join forces to win a business. That's not the collaboration we're talking about. That's a collaboration to create a market, because smart city market is in creation mode. If we want to create that market, we have to erase the terminology competition. And we have to look at how do I sit down with the city and figure out what is the best way to put a solution that is scalable, replicable, and most importantly, bankable.
Mr. Vives.
It is, I won't add anything to what you said, just said. I would say just two more things. Well, the first one is related to integration. We have to understand, we all must understand what integration means. And integration can be resumed in a pole with a light in it, and with some devices related to pollution, people counting, safety, and what else? Whatever. Everything singled out in a single element in which you have mobility, in which you have people, in which you have Wi-Fi, in which you have everything. That's what we're trying to, real integration in the city. It only happens if your organization, our internal organization, is prepared to that. Otherwise, people think that integration is different departments sitting around the table. It doesn't work, I tell you. We know that. The second thing, if we want this concept to work, we have to think socially. We always say that Barcelona works because since 1850, I tell you well, since 1850, Barcelona is a social dream. And it's been a social dream, it is a social dream, and it's going to be a social dream. Otherwise, it's not going to work. We all have to make that smart cities become also a social dream, or at least a helper, an absolutely necessary helper to make this dream become true.
Sí, me gustaría añadir lo que ha dicho el Charbel. Es muchísimo importante la montaje de la arquitectura, la infraestructura de la ciudad. Por ejemplo, cuánto se ha pasado de fibra óptica en toda la ciudad para que genere red disponible. Pero yo creo que hay una cosa que es muy importante, es dividir la responsabilidad de la innovación con las personas. Y el hecho de la capacidad de generar datos, de transformar, de disponibilizar los datos, yo creo que es un reto muy importante, muy difícil. Por ejemplo, nosotros ahí en Río tenemos como 400 terabytes de datos en la municipalidad, ¿no? Y cómo hacer disponibles estos datos con todo el hecho de la privacidad de los datos y cómo generar estos datos para las personas, para compartir innovaciones, para que pueda tener un ambiente de innovación. Y un otro punto que yo creo que es un reto para una ciudad inteligente es la capacidad de trabajar en redes con otras ciudades. Cómo se puede cambiar experiencias exitosas, sea en tecnología, sea aplicaciones que sean efectivas, como las ciudades pueden compartir estas informaciones. Y yo creo que las ciudades son el ambiente más propicio para generar soluciones para los ciudadanos. Hay un problema de compartir las informaciones de los estados, nacionales, los países, y las ciudades son el ambiente propicio para generar las principales respuestas. Hoy 3 billones de personas viven en las ciudades, las grandes ciudades. Hasta 2050, este número va a doblar, 6 billones de personas viviendo en las ciudades. Entonces, la gran responsabilidad del futuro está en las ciudades y la capacidad de esas ciudades compartir informaciones y soluciones para sus ciudadanos.
Great. Well, I think all of us talked about having a vision. I think on top of that, it's about having a roadmap, not just about technology, but about how do we do things, not what, but the how, and then measure the successes. So understanding what the metrics are around sustainability, around healthcare and distributed healthcare, remote healthcare, and then publishing those successes and doing that broadly. I think more of our technology enables us to do that. Sometimes we think about putting technology first, that's going to make everything smarter, and it's actually putting people first that makes for smarter cities. And at the end of the day, I think we have to say the whole goal of this is to create a more sustainable world. If by 2050 there's going to be 9 billion people on this planet with 1 million people a week in urban areas, how are we going to create sustainable opportunities in education and healthcare with our energy needs and water as infrastructure is aging, as new infrastructure emerges? We have to say, how does all of that tie together? I think the challenges that we've had is when you work with governments, oftentimes the different departments aren't collaborating or sharing data and information. And I think that's where you've mentioned that the collaboration around data and opening up data is very important. And I think sustainability is really the holy grail is around the citizen engagement and how governments can respond. And if you do that right, you can open up those opportunities around e-democracy, around engagement and voting, and making sure that there's a clear pathway of where cities are going. So for us, when we look at this, I think we have to put in the context of a more sustainable world. As our resources become slimmer, we're asked to do more things with less resources in cities, but we have to see the new things as the opportunity and provide collaboration opportunities to open that up for many other cities that may not be able to afford to have the best transportation system, or are struggling with their water resources, or have elderly population where they can't provide healthcare services. Technology will enable that. It's not the answer. It's one of the tools that we can all provide to create that sustainable model.
Great. Well, I want to thank all of you. As we open the discussion up to the audience for your questions, I want to thank you for touching on so many important issues. I think if I could summarize just some of the things that we've talked about, the real need for leadership and vision, but also the importance of including the bottom-up approach, this citizen engagement. To paraphrase from President Clinton in his first inaugural address, I think there's nothing wrong with cities that can't be fixed with what is right with cities. So we're at the precipice of kind of a new era in smart cities, and the work that each of you are doing, either in the private sector or in the public sector, is really moving us all forward. So thank you. Please join me in thanking the panel. And now, do you have any questions? There are microphones in the aisles if you want to stand up and... Yes, sir.
Can you hear me? Yes. I'm Giorgio Puisto, Major Cities of Europe. Now, I have a remark about politicians and citizens. Most of the discussion was about that. Now, it is true that politicians are elected to take decisions. This is absolutely vital. It is also true that citizens have their own opinions, and it might be very risky both not to involve citizens and to involve citizens at the same time. What I'm meaning is that example from Rio, what happened in Rio, what happened in Istanbul, or the station in Stuttgart, which made big problems years ago. Even in Barcelona, I know that there's been the Avenida Diagonal issue that gave completely the opposite result than what the city was expecting. Now, so this means it is risky to take decisions without involving citizens. At the same time, citizens can give somehow, let's say, silly answers to key issues. Now, in my opinion, the problem is to have smart participation, which is not any kind of participation, which is a real policy on how to make citizens participate in an effective way so that it gives value. I'm not sure that any city in the world is really doing that in this moment. And I think it's the time to think on how to really engage citizens effectively in taking decisions.
Yes, well, there's an insight on what you say that's very, very interesting. If I sit when having dinner with my wife and my kids and tell them, what do you prefer for holidays, London or Paris? My kids who are grown up are going to say, come on, Dad, you go to Paris or you go to London, I don't care, I go to the beach. If we sit all together and ask them, what are you thinking about your holidays? That's not participation, it's implication. So what we're trying to do here in Barcelona, at least in Barcelona, because it's true, we've gone through several problems related to participation, we are trying to put citizenship at the beginning of the definition of the project, provided that I believe in representative democracy. So the responsibility is mine. I am the one that has to decide, but we try to put the citizens at the beginning of the project, and then we let the professionals to define it, and we politicians have to fix a final decision. If you do it the other way around, it's when all kind of problems come to your desk, and it is when you generate what I call professional participants, who are, by the way, even more politicized, how do you say that? Politicized than we are. So yes, it was a very good point.
Laura.
I think the other thing I would add is that I think cities and government leaders have a pretty good pulse on what citizens are looking for. I think the role of government is to determine how to meet the citizen needs. So I'll give you an example. In Denmark, there's quite a bit of, I don't know if we have any Danish leaders here, but there's quite a bit of focus on the delivery of healthcare services, in particular to the elderly, with an aging population, and how do they extend better quality services. How do they do that in ways that the elderly citizens don't have to travel as much, and to make it a better quality opportunity, or for people with surgeries to have remote health care. So it's not that the citizens are saying, let us tell you how to do this. The government knows what the citizens are looking for. It's about how the city can provide services and extend that and meet the needs of citizens. And the city is the one who's choosing to use remote healthcare devices in homes where that is a comfortable situation for citizens to extend those types of services. So I think oftentimes the city leaders absolutely know what citizens are looking for, because they get that feedback and they have that pulse. And with social media, you know more. With Hurricane Sandy, the government absolutely knows what needs they did not meet for their citizens. And there was a lot of social media. And now the city's trying to engage that the next disaster, they know what to expect, and they'll know how to better serve citizens, whether that's getting the electricity up and running. So I think it's tightening that up and then communicating how governments are meeting needs of citizens and displaying that better, and how those resources are being used from the tax dollars to meet, to give better quality, whether that's in healthcare or education or in emergency response when there's a disaster. And some of the new tools we have today are helping to tighten that together.
Sí, hay una noticia triste para las ciudades, ¿no? Porque, por ejemplo, el hecho de los protestos que hasta ahora fueron por motivos nacionales de países, ahora empieza a ser de motivos cotidianos. En junio brasileño, el motivo era el precio de los transportes municipales. 1 millón de personas en la calle en todo el país por un problema de las ciudades. Esto genera una necesidad de compartir decisiones con los ciudadanos, de participar los ciudadanos. Pero no es solamente, como han dicho, la pregunta, la solución ser generada por el ciudadano. Pero es importante compartir informaciones. Colaboración es un hecho también muy importante. Puedo dar un ejemplo a lo mismo, los centros de operaciones hoy de Río, una forma simple de compartir. Nosotros tendremos en nuestro centro casi 1000 cámaras por la ciudad y que acompañan el tránsito, el tráfico de la ciudad todos los días. El compartilhamento del centro de operações com a plataforma Waze, app, genera um compartilhamento da cidade. 1000 câmeras mirando a cidade, da alcaldía para as pessoas e os olhos das pessoas, a colaboração das pessoas com problema que tem todo o cotidiano, que é o tráfego. Então, é exemplo, por exemplo, de compartilhar colaboração do cidadão com a municipalidade. Uma outra coisa é, por exemplo, que hicimos em Rio, é o hecho de los hackathons, chamar expertos que puedan hacer soluciones de apps que no sean soluciones, tontas soluciones o soluciones no aplicables, pero soluciones que puedan ser aplicables el día a día del ciudadano. Entonces, yo creo que el hecho de generar innovación de los ciudadanos, pero generar también la participación, la colaboración, es clave para involucrar al ciudadano en este nuevo reto de la democracia.
Did you have any? No. Sir.
Okay. Hi, my name is Jong-hoon Lee. I'm coming from South Korea, Seoul. I've been involving in the smart city project for the last 7 years, including the R&D project and also the master plan for the Seoul and Busan city as well. I totally agree about this sharing about this strategic thinking or strategy approach is very, very critical. For example, in Korea, that you need to have a formulate a 5 years plan to have a smart city strategy for each city, and that city should apply to the central government to get a match funding for the boosting their kind of smart city promotion. So within that plan, we actually do the kind of demand analysis for the citizens to see what area they are really needed, and also some of the area that which need to be driven by the public government, such as like minority people and disabled people, some service for that. And another one is actually driven by the kind of ecosystem, creating the using the open data as well. So I think that maybe I see a lot of European cities or US cities. I've been researching on this each cities, and I think that the strategy seems to be a more piecemeal approach rather than integrating approach together. Seems like open data has been approached by the one piece and another one is piece. So it's kind of I'm kind of curious that whether there is a kind of a more integrated view, because the strategy is evolving. My second question is also whether it's the time that maybe we need to have a look at the kind of smart city index or index development on this, to looking at the best practices. I know that some of the institutions, like including the GSMA, is actually developing some of the indicators to looking at each cities, how they're doing. But it is, I think, for sharing the best practice and sharing this kind of different kind of approach. I think maybe the index development may be required. I don't know. I mean, I just want to see you guys' opinions on this. Thank you.
Well, first of all, I think that Korea is a very good example of being straightforward, and in your personal case, I think that it's very clear, and movements from city to government are very interesting, because it means that the government is aware that these policies related to the city are important. The problem is when you go to the government to ask for help and the government is bankrupt, then you better do it by yourself. But it's true. I mean, but I wouldn't say. The good news is that in Europe it is becoming a European policy. I think that we are just about to see how the European Union is going to tackle the city issue as one of the main issues to be developed, because they have discovered that the main opportunities that we as Europeans have related to job creation, to industry creation, are related to the reshuffle of the cities. That's the first point. The second point related to what you call the development, I'm calling it the City Development Index. You know that there's a unit in United Nations that is working on that index related to human development. Well, I think that it is time to have a city quality of life index, development index, okay? Which has to be related not just to smart cities, by the way. It has to be related to the city as the place where we live. Those 6,000 million people living in cities deserve that we develop that state-of-the-art of the cities in order to assess where we are. Once we have that state-of-the-art, we're going to know whether Barcelona is at 60, 70, or 80. We're going to know whether Seoul is at 80 or 90, and we're going to know whether Timbuktu is at 20 or 30 related to that state-of-the-art, which is going to generate the critical path in each city to reach the goal that we have, which is the what and the how. But to me, the main important question is, why do we do that? Why do we invest in that? And again, then is when it becomes social.
Just to tie on that, and I think Korea is a great example. If you just go back about over a decade, Korea was one of the countries that posted their plan on broadband. And when that happened, and the leadership that they had, I think that many countries from the World Economic Forum were measured and ranked on broadband. The challenge was the ranking alone doesn't help. What helped was then the best practices and tools. How do I work on the regulatory issues and standards, and what kind of technologies and competition, what's important for broadband rollout, which was fundamentally an imperative for smarter cities. So as that happened, more organizations, the World Economic Forum, built out that model. And I think that's very relevant today. Today there are other smart city sort of indices. A group called the Smart Cities Council is launching a readiness index, which we are and many other companies participating in. But I think when you have an index in readiness, you then have to say, how do we attach it to the collaboration and best practices so cities can gain the benefit of the great solutions that on citizen engagement and social happening in Barcelona and transportation in London, that cities can learn and say, what does it take for me to be ready, and how do I rank myself of a city of a common size or economic opportunity, or where they are in the development horizon as well. So I think it is an imperative that we provide those as tools, not to do indices or rankings for one city to look better than the other. Cities will naturally compete for economic development and jobs and investment. I think giving more opportunities to collaborate across cities globally through those indexes, through those tools, is the most important thing. The UN does a great job of that, and many other organizations are working to open that up and share best practices.
Charbel?
Very quick comment about the integration. I think if we look at it from this perspective, the cities that has leaders driving the agenda, the cities that has empowered CIO, very few cities has a CIO position. Yes, Barcelona, and very few cities will, and I remember 5 years ago when your political team came on board, when Smart City was announced, the previous mayor called the new mayor, and they said, whatever happens, this agenda is continue with this party or this party. So what I'm trying to say is there is a maturity model that is happening within cities from inside. And this is not something we can make, we can help where we are called to. I think the point I'm trying to make, the integrated approach will happen when cities start changing from inside. It's not a decree. It's not a mandate.
You're right.
It's a behavioral change, and it's a change management journey. If we think about it in that sense, we will understand it's an evolution, it's not a revolution. It's going to take time.
Well, we have time. We have just about 10 minutes, just under. I know this gentleman's been waiting for quite a while, and we'll end with the, is there a question over there? Yes, that is our last question. Sir.
Okay, good morning. Congratulations to the panel for this amazing roundtable. My name is Albert Isern. I am the CEO of Bismart. You have to talk about share best practices and models thanks to CityNext framework or thanks to City Protocol Society. But what do you think about share not only best practices, also real platforms, real technology platforms? Now there are not technology barriers thanks to Azure Cloud, thanks to the technology, there are no technology barriers. What do you think about share these good platforms? For example, open data platform share to Rio de Janeiro. What do you think about that?
We are, that's a very, very, very good question. And I know why you're putting it. We're trying to launch, first of all, in Barcelona, what we call the Barcelona Cloud. But we want to launch worldwide what we call the City Cloud. So my dream would be having a cloud for the cities in which the best solution of Rio de Janeiro could be hooked by me in Barcelona, and the best solution of Buenos Aires could be hooked by Rio de Janeiro. This is the future, I'm sure of it. So we're going to live in a certain world of commons, like in the old cities, in which we all share things. What we have to make sure, though, is that these two guys, work with us, because we need them. We desperately need them, and we need the private sector to work on that. So that's why we have to build the business model for that also. But it has to be built by all of us. But the future is, as you say, it's going to be shared, or there's not going to be future for us.
I would just add, I think the ability to share and drive new solutions in cloud is going to be phenomenal. And I think your vision of city cloud or a national cloud is really the direction that more governments are taking. And it's because of those opportunities that companies like Bismart were born. And I think while we can say from a large company like Microsoft or Schneider or others, we can evolve the infrastructure and framework and put that in the cloud, absolutely. The goal is to make sure that we have innovation and that there's small startup companies like the BizSmart that's in Barcelona that can grow their presence any city in the world, and that new companies around these solutions, energy, water, transportation, the same thing that will happen. And as we see the evolution of cloud, that's going to be a great place to have the capacity to do that, because we'll have the big data, we'll have the ability to drive and open up new applications very quickly. And I think it's a fantastic tool for cities to promote innovation and to get new companies like the BizSmarts of the world going and to grow them in other capacities.
And the last question.
Hi, my name is Carlos Ferreiro. I'm from the Open. I'm really interested in this idea that you were sharing with us about how cities can collaborate with each other. We run a workshop this afternoon on basically a smart cities app program, on how to develop apps for multiple cities. I invite any city official here to want to join us. Still have some openings. But we're really interested in trying to understand how from cities do you envision the role of developers and the opportunities of developers to actually build not opportunities for your cities or not solutions for your city, but solutions for multiple cities worldwide? Because we think we need bigger markets that create more opportunities for developers, because otherwise there's really no business model. It makes it very difficult to scale up the businesses from the bottom up, which I think what we're looking for. Thank you.
It's a great question.
Sí, yo creo que el hecho está en la capacidad que tiene la ciudad de disponibilizar los datos, ¿no? Y los datos que sean accesibles sea para los desenvolvedores, las personas, los expertos que puedan hacer soluciones, crear soluciones, sea para que los otros actores económicos, por ejemplo, que quieran generar negocios para la ciudad, puedan tener acceso también a todo este conjunto de informaciones. Por ejemplo, en Río hicimos un hackathon, ¿no? Exactamente lo que van a hacer hoy por la tarde es poner datos disponibles, un problema, 2, 3 problemas de la ciudad, y desenvolvedores crear un ambiente que sea innovativo, ¿no? Por ejemplo, también hay una otra iniciativa que es un concurso en la ciudad de desenvolvedores de apps, ¿no? Un concurso que sea abierto para desenvolvedores no solamente de la ciudad, pero de Brasil o de afuera, que puedan traer soluciones para la ciudad. Por ejemplo, en la cuestión de los taxis, en la cuestión de los autobuses, en diversas cuestiones, ¿no? Entonces, yo creo que la clave es cómo traer todo este universo de datos que tiene la ciudad, poner disponible para generar soluciones, para los desenvolvedores generar soluciones.
Just want to add a slightly different perspective. First of all, I think the issue is not at the app side, which obviously they're needed and desperately needed. The issue is if you want to develop an app, if we talk to cities, common problems, it's so obvious there is a long list of apps that they all would need. Let's take one as an example and see why it's not happening. If I, as a citizen, want to have a choice about commuting from point A to point B, usually I would understand my option of bus, train, taxi, driving, cycling, walking. This data is coming from different systems. If I can put the data in a way available to brilliant guys, university guys, that can develop an app in 48 hours, it will happen. The problem is providing the source, enabling this innovation. Where is the foundation that would allow us to create the apps? And then I am sure the apps will be needed in Barcelona, in Rio, in London, in Paris, and the list goes on. And we have single initiatives. It's coming at a high price. We see those apps in London, we see those apps in Barcelona, but delivering part of the story, not the whole story, because they managed to get access to some data. And the job of the cities and the activities that's happening in Rio and Barcelona, the first thing you're going to see is when they enable that city OS, this data becomes available to do apps across healthcare, transportation, energy. And the question is, how do we make this happen to allow what you're talking about to become a business as usual, a day-to-day activity? And we're not there yet, but hopefully this activity will happen.
Very briefly, though, once having said that, we desperately need you. I mean, what the hell? Our people in our organizations haven't got your mindset. And your mindset is another one. You belong to the most edgy world of the services. So we desperately need your community of creative people. And we have to make sure that we generate the platforms through which you can cast those initiatives all over the world, through those relationships amongst cities, for you to service us, to sell, to make money, and to even develop more solutions for us.
I would just say absolutely on the developer side, and I think as more companies create those open data platforms and in the cloud, companies like Socrata and others all over the world, there are opportunities to get the data governance right, for cities to decide what data is going to be public data, to engage the entrepreneurs, for companies like Microsoft to provide platforms with open APIs to do the development, and then to think out of the box on some of the new models, because as cities grapple with the data governance and where should the data go, or entire states and regions, one place where a lot of data is showing up and big data can get open to more people is through the universities. And a lot of universities are the repositories of big data and providing open data, working very closely with cities to understand what's open, what's to the public, what are universities working to drive big data analytics that is more private, that is for government only or for national security reasons. So I would also say with cities to say, what is the ecosystem where you engage universities, which is very powerful, because then you're creating the next generation of workforce and learning around some of the most important issues tying back to the city. So we have to do a better job of connecting that ecosystem, creating open data, driving hackathons so that we get developers to see the opportunity to scale apps, not just for one city, but to do that in a cloud in a way that can promote that globally.
Great. Well, listen, thank you very much. I think this was a fabulous session this morning. If I could boil it down into one word, it seems that integration is the word, whether that's integrating departments within cities, integrating cities among cities, and integrating the private sector and the public sector. That is the future for all of us. So we end with where we started, which is looking at all of our opportunity that's ahead of us and what we can achieve together. Please join me in thanking our panelists. You are a distinguished set of experts and leaders. We're grateful to have you. And I want to particularly thank both Microsoft and Schneider for your continued support of the Smart Cities Expo and World Congress. Without your support, none of this would be possible. So thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you to all of you. Have a great day.